Once upon a time, not very far away from your town, in a cosy brick house, there lived 3 little pigs. They felt safe and happy in their sturdy home, especially as they knew they had seen off the big bad wolf, and he would bother them no longer. And with Christmas just around the corner, they were bustling with excitement as they readied themselves and their home to celebrate their favourite time of the year together. Each little pig had their own special job to prepare for the festivities. The first pig, who loved to play and have fun, made the games and activities they would play on the big day: Pin the Tail on the Wolf, Dizzy Piggy and Woodland Whispers. The second pig, who liked to make things beautiful, decorated the house with holly and ivy, twinkling lights, paper snowflakes and a huge Christmas tree overflowing with tinkling bells, shiny baubles and sparkling tinsel. The third pig, who was very clever, was in charge of the food. Making a festive feast is pretty tricky and it takes a lot of concentrating and skill, so he was the perfect pig for the job. He made buttery roasted parsnips and creamy cauliflower cheese, sweet nutty stuffing and crisp roast potatoes. And for pudding, he made a sumptuous cherry pie and custard. Everything looked delicious. But as they were busy with their preparations, the pigs couldn't help but feel that something was missing. Just as they were pondering this, there was a loud knock on the door. The pigs jumped and looked at each other, unsure who would be visiting them on Christmas Day. The first pig peered through the window and gasped. "It's a fox!" he squeaked, trembling a little. The other pigs exchanged worried glances. The fox stood on the doorstep, shivering and cold, looking hungry and lonely, and the pigs straight away felt sorry for him. After all, it was Christmas, a time of year to be open and generous, and they were sure the fox felt the same, so they opened the door. Come in, the pigs cried. Inside, the fox was ushered over to the fire and given a cup of hot cocoa and a blanket. They bustled around him, trying to help him feel warm and comfortable and involving him in their Christmas traditions. As the fox warmed up, he became quite chatty, and the pigs were pleased to see that he wanted to get involved in the preparations. He tried to help the first pig with getting the games ready, but he found it quite tricky to understand all the rules, and he kept saying things like, "These games don't look very fun. Can't we play Chase the Chase the Mouse?" It was a bit annoying, as the first pig had spent so much time preparing, so he suggested that the fox help with the decorating. The fox tried helping the second pig to hang a string of lights over the fireplace, but he kept getting tangled up. He said, "All these decorations are a bit over the top, aren't they? We usually just go out hunting, go for a lovely walk and then come home for supper." This sort of comment wasn't really that helpful, so the second pig suggested that the fox help in the kitchen. The fox tried to help the third pig with buttering the parsnips, but he kept doing it a bit too roughly and the parsnips were turning to mush. "Is this all we're having?" the fox said, wrinkling up his nose. "Well, what do you usually have?" the third pig inquired, a little irritated. The fox thought for a moment. "Sometimes we have rabbit," he said, putting the butter knife down on the table. "Sometimes we have pheasant," he said, wiping his fingers clean. "But our favourite thing to have for Christmas dinner," he said as he licked his lips, "is pig." He leapt over the table towards the pigs, and they squealed and ran through the front door and out into the snowy night. The woods were empty. All the other creatures were at home celebrating with their families, so there was no one there to help as the pigs ran through the night, the fox snapping at their heels. Suddenly, there wasn't just one fox, not 2, but a whole family of foxes chasing the pigs. This had been their plan from the start. The pigs ran and ran, jumping over fallen logs and scraping through brambles, and they were starting to get tired, starting to slow down. Suddenly, they heard a howl, and then, there in front of them was the big, bad wolf, snarling and snapping his jaws. The pigs were terrified, but not as terrified as the foxes. They were enemies of the wolf and had been for generations. The foxes turned tail and scampered back into the woods, whimpering. The pigs were frozen in place, trembling at the new danger before them. But the wolf stopped snarling, sat down, and smiled nervously at them. "Hello, pigs," he said gently. The pigs said nothing. They had been fooled already tonight, and they wouldn't allow it to happen again. "I understand that it might be hard to trust me after everything that happened," the wolf said. "You know, all that huffing and puffing business." He looked a little embarrassed. "Well, I mean to make amends. I was actually on my way to your very nice house now to give you these." He held open his sack, and inside were delicately wrapped Christmas presents addressed to the pigs. "For us?" the pigs said. "For you," the wolf confirmed. "I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I regret how I treated you all. It's no wonder I've never really had any friends when that's how I used to behave. And, well, Christmas is just such a terrible time to be lonely." He offered them a small, hopeful smile. The pigs looked at each other.
What?
They finally realised what was missing from their Christmas. They had been having such a wonderful time together, but deep down, they knew that the wolf was out in the woods, cold and alone, and they simply couldn't enjoy Christmas because of it. "Come on," the pigs said. "You better come home with us." "Really?" the wolf said, his ears pricking up in surprise. "After everything?" "Yep," the pig said. "After all, Christmas is a time for eating, drinking, games, presents and fun. But it's also a time for kindness, for generosity and for forgiveness. So that's what we'll do. Let's go." The wolf followed them home through the woods, chatting and laughing all the way. As they entered the cosy little brick house, he was instantly warmed by the fire. But he also felt warm in his heart too, because he knew he had 3 new friends and his old life was far behind him. He gave the pigs their presents: a banjo for the pig who loved to play and have fun, brightly coloured paints for the pig who loved beautiful things, and a library card for the clever pig so he could read all the books he wanted and would never have to stop learning. The pigs were delighted. The wolf enjoyed the delicious supper and all the games, and the pigs decided that as their special guest, and because he was the tallest, he could put the star at the top of the tree. At the end of the evening, they all hugged the wolf, and he thanked them for their kindness. They invited him back the next year and all the years after that, and he gratefully accepted, knowing that they would now be lifelong friends. The end. And Merry Christmas. The Big Bad Wolf's Christmas Surprise. Once upon a time, there was a tiny village surrounded by a thick, enchanted forest. And in that forest lived the Big Bad Wolf. Everyone in the village and the forest knew the stories about him, how he blew down houses, chased children, and caused general mischief wherever he went. But lately, the Big Bad Wolf had been keeping to himself. He no longer terrorised the village, nor did he stalk the forest paths. He had become lonely, forgotten, and bitter. It was Christmas Eve, and the entire village was buzzing with excitement. The villagers were placing shiny baubles on their trees, hanging twinkling lights, and preparing grand feasts to share with their friends and families. Laughter and cheer echoed through the streets. But high on a hill, in a dark and cold den, the Big Bad Wolf sat alone, far away from the warmth and joy of the village. The wolf watched from his den as the twinkling lights of the village flickered in the distance. He grumbled to himself, "Christmas, bah! What's so special about it? A bunch of silly decorations and pointless gift-giving." He huffed and turned back to the dark corner of his den. His grumpy mood was made worse by a bothersome and irritating feeling of, well, he wasn't sure what. Lately, he'd noticed that the spirit of Christmas, the joy, the cheer, the magic, seemed to be fading. The forest was quieter, the laughter not as bright, and even the snow seemed less sparkling. Not that he cared, but he wondered what had caused it all. As the night grew darker and the villagers started to head to their beds, the Big Bad Wolf was startled by a loud thud outside his den. He pricked his ears and cautiously moved towards the entrance. To his surprise, lying in the snow outside his den was a large, shimmering sack. It sparkled with a soft glow and seemed to warm the air around it. "What now?" he muttered, his nose twitching as he inspected the sack. The wolf gingerly opened the top, peering inside. To his shock, the sack was filled with swirling and glittering magic, and as he stared at it, he felt overcome with joy and awe at the magic of Christmas. The wolf snapped the sack closed again, looking at the tag on it. "To the village, your Christmas spirit, love from Santa Claus." The wolf's eyes widened. "Santa Claus?" he gasped. "This is his sack of Christmas spirit. How did it end up here?" The wolf thought hard about what to do with the sack. What if he just kept it? Finally, he shook his head. "I can't keep this," he muttered. "Christmas may not be for me, but it's important to everyone else." Determined to do the right thing, the wolf knew he had to return the sack to the village before Christmas morning. But how? He couldn't just walk into the village without causing a panic. No one trusted him, and they surely wouldn't believe he was bringing Christmas spirit back instead of taking it away. As he thought about what to do, the wolf's sharp ears picked up the sound of footsteps crunching through the snow. He looked up to see a young boy from the village wandering towards his den. The boy was shivering, his red coat flapping in the cold wind, and he looked lost. "Hey!" the wolf called out before he could stop himself. "What are you doing out here, kid?" The boy froze, wide-eyed and terrified. The big bad wolf?" he stammered. I didn't mean to." The wolf sighed, trying not to scare the boy any further. "Relax, kid, I'm not going to hurt you." "What are you doing so far from the village on Christmas Eve?" I got lost," the boy admitted, his teeth chattering from the cold. "I went into the forest to find a perfect Christmas tree for my family, but then it got dark, and now I can't find my way home." The wolf tilted his head. "Well, you're lucky you didn't get caught by something worse than me. The forest can be dangerous at night." The boy moved quickly to stand closer to the wolf, no longer afraid of him. He looked up at the wolf's large, looming figure and smiled nervously, and then glanced at the shimmering sack behind him. "What's that?" The wolf hesitated, but then decided to tell the truth. "This is Santa's bag of Christmas spirit. It fell near my den, and now I need to return it to the village before Christmas morning, or no one will have a happy Christmas." The boy's eyes lit up. "Santa's bag? Why, this is incredible! But how will you get into the village?" "I was hoping you might help me," with a wry smile. "I can get you back through the forest, and if you can guide me through the village without causing a fuss, we can get the Christmas spirit back where it belongs." The boy thought for a moment, then held out his hand. The wolf looked at it cautiously, and then reached out his paw, and they shook on it. The wolf picked up the magical sack and tossed it over his shoulder. Together, the boy and the wolf carefully made their way through the forest and toward the village. As they approached the edge of the village, the boy turned to the wolf. "We'll go through the back streets and into the square where the big tree is," the boy whispered. "That's where Santa always leaves the Christmas spirit for everyone to share." The wolf nodded, following the boy's lead as they crept through the snowy streets, dodging windows and avoiding the villagers. Soon they reached the village square, where a giant Christmas tree stood proudly in the middle. It sparkled with lights, but something about it seemed dimmer than usual. Without the Christmas spirit, the tree couldn't shine the way it was meant to. The wolf gently placed the sack beneath the tree, and as soon as he did, the tree glowed brighter, and the air around them filled with the sweet scent of pine and cinnamon, and the entire village seemed to hum with warmth and joy. The Christmas spirit had returned. The boy looked at the wolf in awe. "You did it! You brought Christmas back!" The wolf smiled, a real genuine smile, and felt something warm in his chest. "I suppose I did," he said quietly. Just then, a soft jingle filled the air, and a familiar voice boomed from above.
"Ho, ho, ho! What do we have here?"
The wolf and the boy looked up to see Santa Claus landing his sleigh in the square. Santa hopped out and walked over to them with a twinkle in his eye. "Ah, my sack! I wondered where it had gone," Santa said, patting the wolf on the back. "Thank you, Wolf. You've saved Christmas for everyone." The wolf blushed, not used to praise. It was the right thing to do. Santa smiled warmly. "Indeed it was. You've shown that even the big bad wolf can have a heart full of Christmas spirit." The boy grinned and tugged at the wolf's paw. "See? You're not so bad after all." With a jolly laugh, Santa handed the wolf a small wrapped gift. "For you, my friend. Merry Christmas." The wolf unwrapped the gift to find a beautifully crafted ornament, a shining star to place on the village Christmas tree. For the first time in his life, the big bad wolf felt a sense of belonging, and not only that, but the true joy of Christmas. The end, and Merry Christmas. Once upon a time, in the magical, wintry land of the North Pole, there was a fantastical workshop like no other. It was full of bustling elves, tinkling bells, and the smell of fresh gingerbread. This was Santa's workshop, where Christmas magic came to life every day of the year. In this workshop, toys were built, presents were wrapped, and joy was made out of thin air for children all over the world. Of course, Santa Claus himself was in charge of the workshop, but he did not work alone. The elves were small but mighty, fueled by Christmas cheer and extremely skilled in their work. This story is about two of those elves in particular. Holly had an eye for detail, and she had a very important job. She was responsible for making sure every doll had just the right dress, every car had the smoothest wheels, and every teddy bear had a perfectly tied ribbon. She took her job very seriously, and she never liked to ask for help. Jingle was the inventor of the workshop. He was always creating new gadgets and tools to help make Christmas even more magical. He took his job seriously too, but he could be quite shy, and he often worried about what other people would think of his ideas. One chilly December morning, just a few days before Christmas Eve, Santa gathered all the elves together in the main workshop hall. His twinkling eyes were filled with excitement, but there was a hint of concern on his face.
"Listen up, everyone," Santa said. "We have a problem. Some of the most important toys, the ones for children who've been extra good, have been left in the old barn by mistake. They must be retrieved before Christmas Eve, otherwise the children won't have any presents."
The elves gasped and whispered among themselves.
"Don't worry,"
Santa continued, smiling reassuringly.
"I'm sure it's just a mix-up, but I'll need some volunteers to go and collect them. Anyone?"
Holly and Jingle immediately raised their hands.
"We'll go,"
they said in unison. Santa beamed.
"I knew I could count on you two. The old barn is in the far northern forest. It's quite a tricky road, and the weather report says a blizzard is on its way, so it won't be easy. But you'll probably be fine."
Holly and Jingle quickly bundled up warmly. They grabbed a map from Santa, which would help guide them through the North Pole's tricky tracks and winding woods, and off they went, waving goodbye to the rest of the elves. As they made their way through the snow-covered woods, Holly and Jingle chatted eagerly about their mission. Holly couldn't wait to see the special toys, and Jingle was already thinking about how he could improve the toy delivery system for next year. The journey started off smoothly, but as they ventured deeper into the forest, the wind began to pick up. Snowflakes swirled around them, and the once clear path became harder to see.
"This blizzard is coming in fast,"
Holly said, squinting against the cold wind.
"We should check the map to make sure we're still going the right way."
Jingle pulled the map out of his pocket and unfurled it. But as he did, a sharp gust of wind tore it from his grasp, and it was carried away, lost forever.
"Oh no!"
Jingle cried.
"What will we do now?"
Holly tried to raise Jingle's spirits.
"Don't worry, Jingle. I'm sure you'll think of something. You always do."
Jingle felt a little tingle of pride at this. He had a big think and finally he said,
I do have an idea.
And he pulled some special magical binoculars out of his pocket. This amazing invention let him see the nearest cup of hot cocoa, and he immediately lowered them and pointed into the snowy woods, announcing,
That way.
The two elves hurried on and found themselves at a cosy little house made entirely of gingerbread. The walls were covered in sugared jellies, the roof was lined with gumdrops, and a candy cane chimney puffed out sweet-smelling smoke. A golden glow shone from the windows, inviting them inside. They knocked hopefully on the gingerbread door, and, to their surprise, it swung open of its own accord, revealing the most enticing sight. Inside was a warm, glowing room filled with twinkling lights, a roaring fireplace, and the sweet smell of gingerbread and hot cocoa. Sitting by the fire was an old elf, dressed in a patchwork coat and wearing a jolly smile.
Well, well,
The old elf said with a chuckle.
what do we have here? 2 of Santa's finest lost in the storm?
Holly and Jingle nodded and told the old elf about their mission.
I see.
The old elf said kindly.
The old barn's not too far from here, but the blizzard has hidden the path. Perhaps you would like some help?
Holly shifted nervously at this. She didn't like to ask for help, but she knew this was the only way.
Yes, please.
She said nervously, shifting from one foot to the other. The old elf reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, shimmering crystal shaped like a snowflake.
Take this,
He said, handing it to Holly.
It's a snowflake compass. It will point you in the right direction, no matter how fierce the storm. Just follow where it leads and you'll be at the barn in no time.
Thank you.
Holly said, her eyes wide with gratitude. Jingle just gaped at the snowflake compass in wonderment.
How does it work?
The old elf chuckled again.
Just a little Christmas magic, dear boy. Now hurry along. You still have time to make it.
Holly and Jingle thanked the old elf again and stepped back out into the snowy night. As soon as Holly held up the compass, it began to glow softly, showing them the way to go. The wind still howled and the snow still swirled around them, but the compass's glow guided their way. After walking for what felt like hours, the glow of the barn's lights finally appeared through the trees. Holly and Jingle cheered with relief as they hurried towards it. Once inside the barn, they found rows and rows of the most beautiful toys they had ever seen. There were dolls dressed in velvet gowns, wooden trains painted with bright colours, and teddy bears as soft as clouds.
We found them.
Holly exclaimed, her face glowing with excitement. Jingle grinned.
Now let's get them back to the workshop before Santa loads up the sleigh.
The two elves worked quickly, loading the toys onto a special sled that Jingle had found and modified with extra speed boosters. With the magical compass still guiding them, Holly and Jingle made their way back through the forest, the sled gliding smoothly over the snow. As they approached Santa's workshop, they could see the other elves waving and cheering. Santa was standing at the entrance, his face lit up with joy as Holly and Jingle arrived.
Well done, my dear elves, Santa boomed, clapping his hands. You're just in time. You've saved Christmas.
Holly and Jingle beamed with pride as the other elves helped unload the toys and placed them into Santa's magical sack. Santa gave them both a big, warm hug.
You two have shown bravery, teamwork, and best of all, you believed in yourselves, Santa said kindly. I couldn't be prouder.
And as Santa flew off into the starry sky, his sleigh full of toys and his heart full of joy, Holly and Jingle shared a hot cup of cocoa and celebrated their great success. They both knew that this Christmas would be one they would never forget. The end. And Merry Christmas. Once upon a time, at the edge of a quiet forest, there lived a boy named Peter. Peter wasn't one for sitting around. Oh no, he was always off on some adventure, climbing trees, chasing butterflies, or seeing how far he could skip a stone across the pond. Peter lived with his grandpa, a grumpy sort of fellow, but mostly just loved Peter to bits. Grandpa was always reminding him,
"Don't go wandering out beyond the garden gate. It's dangerous out there."
He'd wag his finger and talk about the wolf that prowled in the forest. Peter didn't really believe in this wolf. He'd never seen it, not even a paw print. Probably just a big dog, he thought, shrugging. But he did dream of the wolf. He would dream about it sneaking in through his window or waiting for him on his way to school. He had to know for sure if the wolf was real. So one sunny morning, when Peter saw the garden gate was slightly open, he thought, what could go wrong? And slipped outside. Peter hadn't gone far when he bumped into a little robin, fluttering from branch to branch.
Tweet, tweet. What's up, Peter?
Chirped the robin. Oh, you know, just exploring, Peter said casually, as though he didn't have strict instructions to stay inside. The robin tilted its head.
You're pretty brave. What about the wolf?
Peter snorted. There's no wolf,
Suit yourself,
said the robin, hopping from tree to tree beside him. Just then, a duck waddled up, quacking loudly.
"Peter, what are you doing outside the garden?"
the duck demanded. Same as you, Peter said, hands on his hips. Well, I'm out here because the pond inside is boring, huffed the duck.
It's a shame you can't just fly away like me.
The robin taunted.
It must be such a sad little life, just bobbing around in that muddy little pond.
The duck quacked indignantly at the robin and flapped his wings crossly, and before you knew it, the robin and the duck were arguing. Peter rolled his eyes. All right, calm down, you two. As the robin and the duck squabbled, Peter heard a soft meow. Trouble brewing, Peter? Purred a sleek black cat, slinking towards them. Nah, just these two bird brains, Peter replied. The cat's eyes gleamed. That little robin looks tasty. Don't even think about it, warned Peter. The robin fluffed up his feathers, offended.
Excuse me? You choke on me, furball.
Before the cat could pounce, Peter raised his voice. Enough! Let's all just... But then, a deep, low growl rolled through the trees like thunder. Peter froze. The robin froze. The duck froze mid-quack. Even the cat, who was usually too cool to care, froze. Out from the shadows with golden eyes that gleamed like fire, stepped the wolf. Whoa, whispered Peter. Okay, so Grandpa really wasn't kidding. The wolf licked its lips, his eyes flicking from one delicious morsel to the next. The robin, the duck, the cat and Peter didn't waste another second. They each turned and fled. The duck flapped and waddled as fast as it could toward the pond. The robin zipped up to a high branch. The cat bolted to the nearest tree and scrambled up like its life depended on it, which it definitely did. But Peter, he grabbed a thick branch and stood his ground. You're not getting past me, he said, though his heart was pounding like a drum. The wolf lunged, snapping its jaws, but Peter was quick. He dodged left, then right, swinging his branch like a knight with a sword.
Over here!
Shouted the robin, flapping and diving at the wolf's head to distract it. Peter spotted a rope hanging from a tree. An idea struck him like lightning. He grabbed the rope, climbed the tree faster than he thought possible, and tied a loop. Hey! Big bad wolf! Peter shouted. The wolf snarled and leapt towards him, but Peter dropped the loop right over its head and shoulders. With a mighty tug, he pulled the rope tight around the wolf's middle. The wolf thrashed and growled, but it was stuck, swinging upside down from the tree branch. Just then, Peter heard a familiar voice shouting, "Peter, where are you?" It was Grandpa, running towards him with a group of hunters. They stopped short, staring in amazement at the sight of Peter holding the rope, and the wolf tied up like a big furry package. "You caught it?" one hunter asked, jaw dropped. Peter grinned. "Well, I had some help," he said, nodding to the robin, duck and cat, who all looked pretty pleased with themselves. Grandpa sighed, shaking his head. "Peter, you're grounded for a week." Peter frowned. And, Grandpa added with a wink, "you're the bravest kid I know." The hunters carefully tied the wolf up and were about to take it away when the wolf looked up at Peter, fear and desperation in his yellow eyes. "Wait," Peter said. "What are you going to do with him?" The hunters looked grave. One of them knelt down before Peter and put his hand on his shoulder. "This wolf won't be a danger to you anymore, young man." "You're not going to hurt him, are you?" Peter asked, his eyes wide with shock. The hunter shifted from one foot to the other and couldn't seem to meet Peter's eye. "There must be another way," Peter said. He thought, and just as before, an idea hit him like lightning. "What about the zoo?" he said suddenly. "They have lovely big enclosures and lots of other wolves, and he would be comfortable and well fed, and we would be safe from him, and he would be safe from us. Could that work?" The hunters smiled and said, "Yes, Peter, that would work." The wolf looked at Peter again, and he swore he could see the relief and gratitude in the wolf's eyes. Peter stepped towards the wolf, dodging Grandpa's hand that tried to pull him back, and he reached out to stroke the wolf's soft fur. The wolf stayed perfectly still. "Okay," Peter said gently, turning to the hunters. "You can take him." So the hunters took the wolf away, and Peter returned to the garden, where Grandpa made a big pot of soup to celebrate. The robin stayed to share the crumbs, and the duck quacked about its narrow escape, and the cat curled up by the fire like nothing had happened. But Peter still dreamed of the wolf every night, wondering if he had made the right decision, hoping that he really was having a good life in the zoo. A year later, Peter and his grandfather visited the zoo together. They rushed past the naughty monkeys, the towering giraffes and the ferocious tigers, until they reached the wolf enclosure. They watched and waited, and finally they saw the wolf from the forest step out tentatively from his den, followed by a slightly smaller wolf. The smaller one nuzzled his neck and then turned her head to look back into the den, and 3 fluffy little cubs tumbled and rolled out one by one. They jumped and pawed at the wolf, tugging his ears and licking his face. Peter and his grandfather laughed, and the wolf looked up at Peter, recognition shining in his eyes. He stared for a long time and then dipped his chin at Peter, who nodded back. That night, Peter dreamed of the wolf. He dreamed of riding on the wolf's back, his hands dug deep into the wolf's fur, holding tight, racing through the forest, the wind whipping his face. After that, he never dreamed of the wolf again, because he knew for a fact that he had done the right thing. And so, Peter and the wolf lived happily ever after. The end. Once upon a time, there was a forest full of friendly animals. They lived in harmony, taking care of each other and enjoying their days playing in the shade of the trees and splashing in the forest pools. It was bliss. All apart from one thing. There was one forest animal who was a little bit, well, he didn't get on as well with the other animals. The hare liked to spend his days running around the forest as fast as he could, which was really very fast indeed. He could run so fast, he was like a blur, pinging all around the trees, up and down the hills and running circles around the other animals, shouting out, "I'm faster than you, I'm faster than you." Deeper into the forest, where the shade was thicker and cooler, and the bushes and ferns dampened the sounds of the children playing, lived an old tortoise. Everything he did was slow, purposeful, and deliberate. But he was also kind, and he was very wise. The other animals were always travelling to his quiet corner of the forest to ask for his advice. One day, when the hare had been particularly obnoxious, running rings around the other animals and laughing at them when they tried to catch him, the animals went to the tortoise for help. "Tortoise," they said, "please help us. The hare is driving us crazy. He's upsetting the children, and he's making our happy forest life very tricky indeed." "I can help," the wise old tortoise said, and here is what he did. The next day, the tortoise slowly plodded his way to the hare's part of the forest and knocked on his door with a gnarled old foot. "Hello, old tortoise," the hare smirked. "What have you dragged your slowpoke shell all the way out here for?" "I've come to challenge you, hare, to a race." The hare laughed and laughed until tears rolled down his furry face and he was bent double, wheezing. Finally, once he had composed himself, he said, "You surely can't mean that, old tortoise, for I'm the fastest animal in the forest and you're slower than a snail stuck to a frosty stick."
"Tomorrow, sunrise, we meet by the lily pond," the tortoise said,
and then he turned his back and started the slow plod back to his house. At sunrise the next morning, the hare arrived at the lily pond and found the tortoise was already there at the starting line. Not only that, but all the other forest animals had got up early, hopeful that the hare might get some sort of comeuppance for his actions. The tortoise had sketched the route for the race in the dirt with a stick. They would race past the lily pond, zigzag up and down the forest paths, up to the top of Windy Hill and back down the other side, and finally back to the lily pond again. The hare smirked. It would take him barely an hour to race that far. He'd be back in time for breakfast. He wouldn't be surprised if it took the tortoise all day. A raccoon lined them up at the starting line and said, "On your marks." The hare looked over to the tortoise and grinned a toothy grin. "You regretting this yet, slowpoke? Get set. Eat my dust," the hare said. "Go!" The hare shot off in a cloud of dust and disappeared into the forest so fast he was barely a blur. The assembled animals cheered and whooped. "Go on, tortoise! Tortoise for the win! Tortoise, tortoise, tortoise!" But as the dust slowly settled, the animals' faces fell. As the air cleared to reveal that the tortoise had barely taken 3 steps over the line. Plod, plod, plod. He didn't seem to be trying at all. Meanwhile, the hare was zipping and boinging up and down the zigzagging forest paths and was heading for Windy Hill. Animals from all over the forest lined the track to see him thunder past them at rocket speeds, and then stood in anticipation to see the tortoise. They waited and waited, and it seemed hours before he appeared in the distance, plodding along just as slowly as before, his speed steady and consistent. "Come on, tortoise!" the animals cheered. "Faster! You can do it!" The tortoise simply gazed straight ahead with a calm, focused look and carried on just the same. Plod, plod, plod. The hare had reached Windy Hill and started the ascent. It was a steep, rocky incline, but the hare made short work of it and was soon at the very top, looking out at the view of the forest and far beyond. He stopped for a moment to admire it. The sun had come up fully now, and the heat of it was beating down on his head, and he was very sweaty and out of breath. He'd woken up very early to do his stretches and have a hearty breakfast before the race, and he was only now realising that he hadn't really had enough sleep. He noticed a little patch of soft grass under a shady bush, wild flowers growing all around. "The tortoise won't be here for hours," he thought smugly. "I'll have plenty of time for a quick rest." And so he lay down, comfy and cool, planning to just rest his eyes for a moment. But the moment turned into a minute, and the minute turned into 10, and without meaning to, the hare fell fast asleep. The tortoise trudged on at his steady pace. He reached the end of the zigzag path and started the slow ascent to the top of Windy Hill. The sun beat down on him, but it warmed his smooth shell and scaly skin pleasantly, and he continued his way without breaking a sweat. Up and up he went until he reached the top. The view was breathtaking, but he did not stop to admire it. On he pushed, plod, plod, plod. The animals in the forest had noticed that the hare hadn't returned from the hill and peered down the forest path in anticipation. In the distance, they saw the tortoise approaching, and they started to cheer and stamp their feet. The commotion in the forest startled the hare awake, and he jumped to his feet. "Oh no," he said, "I must hurry." He dashed down the hillside faster than ever, dust flying up behind him. He dashed past the forest animals, wind whipping their faces. In the distance he could see the finish line and the tortoise inching closer to it. He hurtled toward it at a speed that shocked even him. His muscles screamed and his feet burned, but he would not, could not lose to a tortoise. The animals at the finish line were jumping up and down, shouting and hugging each other as the tortoise plod, plod, plodded and placed one gnarled old toe over the finish line. and a fraction of a second later, the hare came hurtling over it too, so fast he couldn't stop in time, careening straight into the lily pond. Splash! The tortoise had won. Dripping, the hare sloshed his way out of the pond and approached the tortoise. "You won fair and square," he said, looking down at his feet. "I hope you learned your lesson, hare," said the tortoise. "You mustn't rush around so much. Slow and steady wins the race." The hare's cheeks blushed and he turned to the other animals. "Sorry, everyone," he said. From that day on, the hare was a little steadier, a little calmer. He only used his speed for important and helpful jobs, or to make the children giggle, and everybody loved him. And so he lived happily and steadily ever after. The end. Once upon a time, there was a mother goat, and she had 7 little kids. She loved them all very much, and she worked hard to keep them all happy and healthy. Not so very far away, there was a big bad wolf. He worked very hard to keep only himself happy and healthy. He didn't much care about anyone else. One day, the mother goat needed to go to the market to get some delicious dinner for her kids. As she left the house, she told her little baby kids to lock the door behind her and not to open it for anyone. Don't open the door for anyone, especially the big bad wolf. He might try to trick you, but remember, his voice is rough and gruff and grumpy sounding, and his paws are grey. If you remember those things, he won't be able to trick you. She kissed them all goodbye, and off she went to the market. Before long, the wolf came along, just as the mother goat had predicted. He knocked on the door and said, "Little goats, it's me, your mother. Do let me in. I've bought treats for you from the market." The little goats listened carefully and heard the rough, gruff, grumpy sound of the wolf's voice. "Go away," they shouted. "We know you're the wolf. Your voice is rough and gruff and grumpy, and our mother's voice is lovely and nice. You can't fool us." Quite annoyed, the wolf stomped off, back into the woods he came from. A bee buzzed around his head and he had an idea. He found the bee's nest and carefully took a little bit of honey, which he ate up in one big lick. When the honey reached his throat, it soothed it and made his voice sound all smooth and lovely and nice. He grinned wickedly. Off he went back to the little goat's house and knocked on the door again. "Little goats, it's really me this time, your mother, back from the market with treats for all of you. Do let me in." The little goats all looked at each other. It really did sound a lot like their mother. But the littlest goat peeked through the letterbox and saw the wolf's grey paws. "You're not our mother," he cried. "Your paws are grey and our mother has white hooves. Go away, you can't fool us." Even more annoyed, the wolf skulked off, back into the woods he came from. As he walked, he got tangled up in a spider's web, the sticky silk covering his face. "Ugh!" he cried. But then he had an idea. He took the pale, silvery white spider silk and wrapped it round and round his hands, smoothing it and shaping it as he did so that after a while his paws looked just like little white hooves. Off he went back to the little goat's house and knocked on the door once more. "Little goats, here I actually am this time, your dear mother, back from the market with treats for all of you. Listen to my lovely and nice voice and look at my cute little white hooves." He dangled them daintily by the letterbox for the little kids to have a look. "Please let me in." The little kids looked at each other again and they all nodded in agreement. Nothing to worry about here. They happily unlocked the door and threw it wide open to greet their mother and eat their delicious treats. The wolf jumped through the door and said, "Ha-ha, it's me, the wolf, you silly little goats. It was me all along. I fooled you." He chased them all around the house and they tried to run away and hide. 3 goats hid under the bed. He found them. 2 goats hid behind the sofa. He found them. 1 goat hid under the doormat. He found him rather easily. The wolf threw them all in his sack to take home for his dinner. But after the busy morning he had had, traipsing back and forth to the woods and then chasing those pesky little kids all around the house, the wolf felt rather tired. He spotted a nice little patch of soft grass under a shady tree just by the riverbank, and he thought,
I'll just have a little nap, and then I'll head on home with my sack of goats and eat them for my tea.
Feeling very smug, the wolf set down the sack and went to sleep. But there was something the wolf hadn't realised, something that he had missed. And if he had listened properly at wolf school in his maths lessons, it would not have been so easily overlooked. Earlier on, when he was chasing the little kids, trying to find them all in their hiding places, there were 7 little goats. But in his sack, well, let's see, 3 goats under the bed, 2 goats behind the sofa, 1 goat under the doormat. That's only 6 little goats in the sack. 1 little goat was missing. Meanwhile, back at the goat's house, the real and very lovely mother goat returned from the market. She opened the front door and gasped at what she saw. The house was in utter disarray. The chairs had been knocked over, the curtains had been pulled off their hooks, and her lovely little baby goats were all gone. "Where are you, my little kids?" she called out, panic-stricken. Then a little muffled voice said, "I'm here, Mother." She followed the sound of the voice to the grandfather clock and opened the little door wide. Her littlest baby goat was squashed inside. After she had pulled him out and he had told her exactly what had happened, the lovely mother goat put her serious face on. She didn't use it very often, usually if they wouldn't tidy their toys or if one of them pinched a brother or sister goat. But when she did, her baby goats knew she meant business. She took the littlest goat by the hand and marched off towards the woods, determined to give that naughty wolf a very severe talking to. They found the wolf still snoring under the tree, the sack of goats still wriggling and jiggling beside him. Mother Goat had an idea. She carefully opened the sack and, encouraging the little kids to be as quiet as possible, she freed them. She hugged and kissed all 6 of the little rescued goats, and then she got to work. She collected up 6 of the biggest rocks she could find and placed them in the sack, tying it up again just as she had found it. She and her 7 little kids watched, hidden behind a big boulder, as the wolf stirred and woke from his nap. He licked his lips and rubbed his greedy paws together as he went to lift the sack onto his back. But the sack was so much heavier than before, and the wolf wasn't expecting it, and the weight of it, as he swung it over his shoulder, made him stumble backwards, right into the river. Splash! The little goats and their mother goat laughed and laughed, and then they skipped back to their little house. After a bit of tidying up, they sat around their table enjoying the treats their lovely mother had brought from the market. And they all lived very, very happily ever after. The end. There was once a mother duck. She had laid a little pile of perfect blue-green eggs in her nest, and she sat on them, patiently, lovingly, for exactly 28 days, checking them and turning them just right so they would all hatch into perfect, healthy ducklings. After exactly the right amount of time, the eggs started to shake and wobble, and slowly they began to crack. First, smooth, dainty little beaks appeared, and then cute little yellow faces. And finally, fluffy little bodies emerged from the eggshells, and the tiny little baby ducklings started cheeping adorably at their mother. But there was one egg left. It was bigger than the rest, with a dull grey colour. While the cute little ducklings all shook their little tails and started getting to know each other, the last egg just lay there. It didn't move. The mother duck was very sad. Even though she knew that not all eggs hatch, she felt sure she'd done everything right for her eggs, and she couldn't understand why this one was taking so long. But she was a good mother, and she carried on warming the egg and turning it carefully with her beak, until finally, after 8 more days, the egg finally wobbled and cracked. The crack revealed a long black beak, a dull grey face, and a clumsy and awkward body. The ugly duckling tried to cheep cutely at its mother, but only an unpleasant hissing honk came out, and all its fluffy yellow brothers and sisters laughed. The mother duck shushed the naughty ducklings and told them not to be unkind. She nuzzled her new baby and kept him tightly under her wing to keep him warm and safe and show him that he was loved and wanted. He quickly became stronger and bigger than all of his siblings, even though they were older than him. After a few days, he was ready to swim with his mother and leaped into the pond with great enthusiasm and excitement. The water felt wonderfully cool on his scrawny black legs, and he dived and splashed to his heart's content. His brothers and sisters watched from the pond's edge. They didn't feel ready to swim just yet, and they became even more hateful of the ugly duckling. They didn't like how closely their mother kept him, and now they didn't like that he was showing them up with his swimming skills either. They decided he would have to go. So one evening, while the mother duck was out finding some juicy slugs for their dinner, they crowded round the ugly duckling and pushed him cruelly out of the nest. "We don't want you here. You don't belong with us," they said. The ugly duckling was heartbroken, but he knew deep down that he was different somehow. So he left the nest, the pond, and his beloved mother duck, and went out to find his own way in the world. He padded his way across the moonlit farm to a river, where he slid into the gentle current and drifted away. After a short while, the ugly duckling felt something cold and slippery touch his webbed foot. He felt suddenly very small and very alone on the river. It touched him again, and he started to paddle faster, and then he felt something very sharp clamp down on his foot. He screamed and flapped his stubby little wings and kicked his feet to get away. He shook the thing off and made it to the riverbank to see the pike dive back down under the black water, its sharp teeth glinting in the moonlight. The ugly duckling wondered if perhaps the river wasn't the safest place for such a little thing. He waddled along down the riverbank a little further. From the corner of his eye, he saw a flash of orange and heard the gnashing of jaws, and suddenly a fox was upon him, trying to gobble him up. He leapt back into the river, thinking to take his chances with the pike again, and the fox slunk away. The rest of the night was spent between the river and the bank, avoiding rats, otters, and even an enormous owl who swooped down to try and snatch him up in her claws. When the sun finally came up, the ugly duckling was exhausted. As he paddled down the river, he saw a little cottage with a neat little vegetable garden and a rickety wooden shed. The door was slightly open, and so he quickly went inside. It was warm and safe in the shed, and the garden was full of delicious, juicy slugs. The ugly duckling made himself a shaggy little nest out of bits and bobs he found in the shed, and decided to stay a while. The little old lady from the cottage found him there, but instead of shooing him away, she laid a handful of fresh peas from her garden by his nest and let him be. She was glad of the help with the slugs, and he was no bother, even if he was rather unsightly. The ugly duckling stayed there in the shed all winter, occasionally taking quick dips in the river to wash, but never stayed in the water long enough to really enjoy himself, for fear of the riverbank creatures who might have him for lunch. As spring started to brighten the garden, the ugly duckling found that his little nest had become rather too small, and he was finding it very difficult to squeeze through the gap in the doorway of the shed. The little old lady could tell it was time for him to go. She gave him one last handful of peas and stroked his head and waved him off as he stepped into the river. He didn't want to go, but something in his heart told him he had to move on. He paddled down the river bravely and was surprised that the other creatures on the riverbank seemed to give him a wide berth. He came to a lovely wide part of the river, where the water was calm and still, and there before him he could see what seemed like 1,000 beautiful white birds with long, elegant necks and huge, graceful wings. They filled the water and the sky like snowy confetti, and he'd never seen anything so wonderful. Worried that they would laugh at his ugly appearance, the ugly duckling kept his head low and paddled on, eager to get through without being mocked and teased, but desperate to stay longer to watch the lovely birds. He noticed that as he swam through the birds, they seemed to be stopping to look at him and turned to track his progress down the river. He paddled harder, worried that the jeers and laughter would soon start. But instead, he could swear that one dipped its head in a gesture of respect. The ugly duckling lifted his head and couldn't believe it when the birds met his eye and smiled. Not a pitying or sympathetic smile, but hopeful and friendly smiles. Why weren't they laughing at him? He slowed his paddling and let the ripples of water go still around him. The current of the river was so slow and still there, it was like glass. The ugly duckling looked down at his reflection and froze. Gone was his long black beak. Gone was his dull grey face, and gone was his clumsy, awkward body. In its place was a smooth white body, powerful white wings, and a slender curving white neck leading to a handsome black and orange beak. The ugly duckling smiled. He had grown into the most magnificent swan. The end. Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived a young boy who spent all of his days sitting high up on a hill under a maple tree. He had just one job: to watch over the sheep from the big, bad wolf. The wolf, too, had just one job: to hunt down sheep to satisfy his hunger. The boy often found himself bored. Guarding the sheep day in, day out left him wishing for a different job, or perhaps some excitement. More than anything, he hated sitting alone all day, every day. So, one day, he decided to shout, "Help! Help! A wolf is chasing the sheep, and they're all running away!" The villagers heard the boy's cries, and they all dropped what they were doing and quickly rushed to help. But when they reached the top of the hill, there was no wolf, just the boy and the sheep, peacefully resting in the greenest grass you could imagine. "Where is the wolf?" the villagers asked. "There is no wolf," the boy said, unable to stop himself from laughing. The villagers were upset. They were exhausted from running and frustrated about their interrupted work. One of the men turned around and shouted at the boy, "Don't cry wolf when there is no wolf around. Only call for help when you truly need it." The boy found all of this very amusing. He was quite the little prankster and enjoyed seeing people rush up the hill for no reason. So, the next day, the boy walked up the hill with his flock. He cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled again. "Help! Wolf! Help me! He's going to eat all the sheep in my flock!" Once more, the villagers dropped what they were doing and ran up the hill. And once again, there was no wolf. "Where is the wolf?" the villagers asked. "There is no wolf," the boy replied, and once again he couldn't help but laugh. Again, a man turned and firmly said, "Don't cry wolf when there isn't one around. Only call for help when you truly need it." The next morning, the boy went up the hill with his flock again. And wouldn't you know it, this time, he actually saw a real wolf hiding in the nearby forest. At first, the boy didn't know what to do, but then he started yelling, "Help! Wolf! Help!" The people in the village heard his cries, but this time they knew better and didn't come running up the hill. The villagers kept hearing his cries, but didn't move an inch. They wouldn't fall for the same trick again. Now all the sheep ran away and were lost, chased off by the wolf. The boy was very saddened by this and sat down by the tree again. But this time, there was no smile on his face. At the end of the day, the villagers waited as usual for the boy to bring back the flock of sheep. But that evening, the boy didn't return. They decided to go and see what was wrong. The villagers gathered around the boy. Through his tears, he asked, "Why didn't you come to help me? A big bad wolf chased all the sheep away. I yelled and yelled, but no one came to help." The villagers were angry because their sheep were lost. The man who had always advised the boy to stop yelling as a joke said, "Now you see, no one believes a liar. How are we supposed to know if it was real or if you just did it for your amusement again?" From that day on, the boy always told the truth. Or at least he tried to.